And the only other thing I forgot to say was my name's Jack Bernicle, and welcome to the Sports and Performance stage. I'd also like to bring up here someone who, well, he knows a lot about this because he was the man who started off with that strange-looking thing at the end, was happily known as Wandering Elsie, I believe, because of the fact that it handled like a bag of spanners. But it was the first bike that this man built when he was getting extra power out of a Norton rotary engine. Because of course Norton had been producing a production bike with the rotary valve engine that, you know, was about 80 brake horsepower. There were police bikes mainly that they were making, and it was this guy who saw the potential in the rotary valve engine and thought, why don't we make a racing engine out of this? And this is the kind of, all these have been kindly supplied by James Hewing from the National Motorcycle Museum. They're all their motorcycles, and they kind of trace the history of the successful history of the rotary valve Norton. The man who started the whole thing off, he'd actually, and I was surprised to find this out, he was a 3-time 50cc British champion in the mid-70s. And what he was running then, he had a Honda dealership, he was running a 4-stroke Honda against the all-concrete 2-strokes and beating them. So he'd obviously discovered some dark art of 4-stroke mechanics and development back then. And that's what that started him off on the road to Norton and the rotary valve. So please will you bring a big warm welcome to an extremely dry Midlander. Just listen to this Stafford accent. The man who started the rotary valve Norton story, Brian Crighton. Welcome, Brian. Now, I'm not sure. I think we'll stay stood up, but it's a bit cramped when we get to the front then. So, Brian, you in 1986, when things weren't looking so good, you kind of closed down your Honda dealership and headed and actually got some work at Norton. But prior to that, tell us how on earth you got a 4-stroke Honda to defeat the wizard little 2-strokes in 50cc racing? Or was it just your sublime skill as a rider?
Not really, no. I was a lot thinner then, by the way.
I should think you
put
were.
A lot of weight on. I wouldn't be riding 50s now. Well, it all started off with I wanted to race, but I could never afford a proper racing bike, really. It was just too expensive. So the only thing I could do was modify a road bike. So I had a Honda C110, which was a bike that Honda made, just a road bike. And I did a lot. It was a pushrod engine. I did a lot of work on it, and I was getting pretty good results with it. And then I bought an SS50, which was an overhead cam version of it, a bit later on. And I did a lot of work on that and got it going a lot better. And I was doing pretty well with it. I couldn't win with it, but I'd learned a lot about engines. And then I managed to get off Nigel Stone a CR110, which was a 8-speed 50cc bike with 4 valves. So it was a little dual thing. But by then it was really not competitive. So I needed to get some more power out of it. But in the meantime, with the other bikes that I'd built, I wanted to try and understand the book. I read every book I could on it, but it still wouldn't tell me everything I wanted to know. So I tackled doing things myself, and I did this silly thing where I had connected the hose pipe up to the tap, and I had it connected to the inlet track, and I'd got the tap flat out, getting absolutely soaked with a pair of goggles on, watching how the water flow went through the ports and playing around, putting filler in there and seeing what it did. And I found that if you could make the water look clear, there wasn't turbulence in it. So that was the idea, to keep the water as clear as possible flowing through the port. So, and I also did a lot of work making my own camshafts, but I hadn't got no proper machinery to do it. I did them by hand, really, with just a hand grinder and just a diamond file, and just did them by hand. And the thing was doing 17,000 RPM, and I won quite a lot of races with it, and obviously won the championship with it.
Now, so you obviously getting a handle on tuning engines by that point, but how did you have your first connection with a rotary valve Norton? How did that come about?
Well, what happened there was a friend of mine turned up at our house, and he'd got a prototype of the rotary bike that they was developing, and he said, "Do you want to have a go on it?" I mean, it was a prototype thing, and so I had a go at it, and I went up the road on it, and I thought, wow, this is fantastic. It was just so smooth, and for its day, it was quite powerful, you know, a nice spread of power, and I thought, oh, this would be fantastic, because I've got racing in my blood. I thought, must get this get this racing. But anyway, I've just finished with my motorcycle shop there, and I said, well, can you get me a job there? Can I get me a job at the place? So eventually they gave me a job in the service department. And at that time, Norton had had an injection of money from the government, but they weren't allowed to sell bikes to the general public. They could only sell them to the police forces and the Air Force. So I had the job of looking after the police bikes. And so obviously, things I shouldn't have done really, but I used to go shooting off up the road on the police bike, chasing everybody and flat out everywhere. And having a bit of fun, you know, because we'd got all the police gear on. And so that was good, and I thought, oh, this would make a fantastic race bike.
Yeah. But you weren't getting too much support. That suggestion didn't go down too well. You did get yourself some work in the service department to start with at Norton, so you got a foot in the door.
Yeah, that's right. But I thought this would make a super race bike, but I couldn't get the management interested. They said it just wouldn't be competitive, and I said, well, I'm sure I can get more power out of it. I says, can you let me have, you know, there was a police bike that was lying in the corner that had been there, a crashed bike, for some time, and I said, well, look, it won't cost you anything. Can I just have this bike and have the engine out of it, and I'll do my own things to it. I mean, I'll do it at night, it won't cost you anything, I'll pay for anything I need to do. And that's what I did, really. So, because I said I'm sure I can get 120 horsepower out of this, but they all laughed at me. Anyway, so one of the nights when everybody had gone, there was only a couple of people left, I put it on the dyno, at the Norton dyno. And the very, very first run, I find it incredible to say this, but it actually did do 120 horsepower the first time I ever run it. Was, you know, was really surprised with it, that it actually worked straight away. So I went to the management to, I said, well, can we do a race bike now? No, we can't. We haven't got the money to do it. I says, well, can I have the rest of this bike and just make a hack that I can just take to Myra and just see what speed it can do? So that's the bike on the end there. I mean, I'm not that proud of it. It's a bit of a hack, really. So I cut the back end off and put some twin shocks on it and whatever. And we took it to Myra, where it did 170 miles an hour.
Which was pretty good in those days.
Which was pretty
must
good,
have impressed them a bit, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we had a funny story really about it, because Myra isn't really supposed to have race bikes on there, but we talked the main person into letting us go around it, and he said, well, go round, but tell your rider to keep looking round, because we've got some very fast Jaguars doing some high-speed testing, so just keep looking, every time you come to the corners, just make sure that the Jaguars are, you're not going to get in the road of the Jaguars. So I said, okay. Anyway, so the bike went off, whoosh, straight past these Jaguars, just no comparison to speed, up to 170 miles an hour. And there was a policeman there with a radar gun, and he was looking, blimey, 170 miles an hour. I've never seen that speed before on my radar gun, you know. And this, the guy that was running Myra said, blood and sands, and he got on his radio and said, can you get those slow Jaguars off the track? We've got a very fast motorcycle on the track. So it went from, the Jaguars were going very fast to get them slow cars off.
And did this colossal top speed interest the management then? No, it didn't, did it? Because they just gave you the caretaker's house or something to work in.
I still wasn't really interested. I couldn't convince them to do it, and I just got really fed up with it, and I thought, oh, I've had enough of this. So I basically left Norton. I resigned, actually. I said, oh, no, I don't want to be along with this outfit if they're not interested in this, because it's going to do really well. So I left them, really, but I didn't realise that because I'd gone, they'd suddenly lost the person that was doing all the electronic stuff and some of their development work. So they actually asked me back. And I said, well, okay, we'll come back, but on the proviso that you'll let me build a proper racing bike. So that was the deal, really. So when I went back, they said I could build a racing bike, and that's what that red, silver, blue was. Well, that's a variant of it.
And that you used an RG Suzuki chassis initially on that, did you?
No, we used RG 500 Suzuki geometry to make the chassis, because we had to start somewhere, and at the time, the RG 500 was the bike that was going really well. But as well, I mean, when Dave Hickman will come on, he'll tell you, but obviously that geometry would not work with our engine, because our engine was so much more torque than what the RG, well, we probably had the most torque of any engine at the time, and it just tied itself in knots, really. It wasn't really working properly, so we had to do several different versions of the chassis to eventually get there. But at this time, we was obviously racing in front of everybody. We was breaking gearboxes all the time because the road gearbox was not meant for. Well, I was probably getting closer to 130 horsepower then.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, the road gearbox didn't like it.